My son slammed the bowl and hit me because the soup had no salt. I tasted blood, steadied my breath, and told myself after a lifetime of cooking and keeping, this would be the last time he mistook my silence for weakness. That night, I set the salt shaker in the center of my table, walked into the world of receipts and cameras, and decided I would only speak in rooms with clocks, no signing, no secrets, just proof. What followed wasn't yelling. It was a quiet storm of paperwork and witnesses that would change who held the power in my house. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I was up at 5, same as always. The bungalow was blue with pre-dawn light. Lemuel sat at the kitchen table in his gray suit, phone in hand. He didn't look up. Breakfast, he said. Hurry. Big meeting. As if last night hadn't happened. As if a bowl hadn't flown. As if my lip hadn't bled on the tile. As if I weren't his mother, but the help. Habit moved me. Scrambled eggs, 3 spoonfuls of shredded cheese folded in, 2 slices of toast, dark gold, black coffee, no sugar cup warmed first. Rituals are cheaper than storms. He tasted the eggs, nodded, then let his gaze land on my mouth. The front door clicked. Shannon came in on heels that ticked against the wood, a green dress poured neat. She kissed his cheek and sat. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale." She sang the voice she saves for when he's in the room. "How are you?" "I'm fine, thank you," I said. The truth had edges. Lemuel slid a small box across the table. "Look, Mom, pick this up. Perfect for covering those little scrapes from your trip." Little scrapes. Inside sat imported foundation, the kind that costs more than I ever paid for perfume. He likely bought it with my pension. He manages my accounts for my own good. 2 years and not a penny has reached my hands without his say-so. I set the bottle beside the salt shaker, both centered like bookends. Cover and truth. He watched, shrugged, went back to his phone. He pushed his plate forward. Lunch today. Shannon's friends. Pasta salad, something nice. He opened his wallet and counted out 3 crisp 20s like it was kindness and not a leash. Make it work. Not the cheap wine. $60 to feed 5. I did the math. Shrimp on sale, a mid-shelf white greens with a coupon bread if I bake. The bills lay bright as a warning. Witnesses live beyond this house. Receipts, timestamps, clerks who ask questions. He checked his watch. And clean the guest bath. Clients may stop by. He smoothed his tie, kissed Shannon's hair. At the door, he leaned to my ear. "Remember, you fell. If you open your mouth, you'll regret it." When the door shut, the house exhaled. I let the night replay, not to suffer it again, but to mark the line. The soup had been plain chicken stock, carrots, celery, bay leaf. I'd forgotten the salt. He lifted the spoon, sneered, and the bowl flew. Heat struck my cheek. Porcelain popped and scattered. I tasted metal and steadied myself on the chair. He went to bed. I knelt with an old rag and wiped my own blood. I'm 62. I have iron in my hair and more in my spine. Last night didn't make me meek. It made me precise. I set the foundation flush with the salt shaker again. The kitchen looked ordinary, sun teasing the laminate, the fridge humming, the clock ticking, but the arrangement felt like a small altar. Don't cover what should season the truth. What still belonged to me? My mother's quilt on the chair back, the wooden spoon that stirred fevers and Sunday stews, the crooked clay dish Shannon once called too homemade. Everything else, his shoes by the door, his jacket on the sofa, had crept in like vines. Outside, East End woke slow. A bus sighed, a dog pulled a man down the sidewalk, a neighbor's ring chimed. The sound steadied me. Eyes existed out there. The world, when invited, could witness. Rule 1 arrived clean and simple. Don't argue, document. Arguing feeds fire and leaves no proof. Paper is patient and remembers. Today, I would start counting where the world could see. I dried my hands, tore a grocery coupon from the mailer, and wrote on the blank side, "Evidence, not excuses." I slid it into my purse behind my Medicare card. Then I lined the 3 20s on the counter and wrote their serial numbers on a sticky note. Petty, maybe. Precise, definitely. I dated it. Tuesday. Before I left, I turned the salt shaker so its spout faced his chair. A quiet dare. I set the foundation so the brand faced the window. If he wanted me painted, the light could look at it. The bruise sang when I smiled at the microwave door. We're not hiding, I told the woman there. We're recording. At 7, the sun cleared the roofs. I tucked my list into my pocket and lifted my canvas bag. On the pad by the phone, I wrote 3 lines. Last night, 7:10 p.m., soup no salt, assault bowl shattered, lips split. 5:05 a.m., makeup gift with script you fell. 6:40 a.m., 3 $20 bills for lunch, threat repeated. I left the note under the blue bonnet magnet. Not hidden, not loud, present. On my way out, I touched the salt shaker, then glanced at the foundation. They kept each other honest. By the porch, the air was warming. The street smelled like wet grass and tortillas from the taqueria on the corner. Ordinary helps. Ordinary is where truth hides and where it can be found. Today I would collect small things, a receipt that prints the time a clerk's question, a camera over a checkout lane. Little witnesses add up. Last night a line was drawn in blood and broth. This morning I drew another ink on paper. I closed the door and locked it, feeling the teeth of the key bite my palm. Through the window I saw them one more time, the salt and the bottle. 2 quiet sentries on the table. If he asks for salt tonight, I'll hand him the shaker and a copy of the receipt. And if he doesn't, I'll still start counting out loud where the world can hear. At the store, someone will glance at my mouth and ask a simple question. I will answer simply too and let the receipt speak. The automatic doors of H-E-B whooshed open, spilling cool air against my face. I kept my canvas bag tight under my arm, the folded coupon with last night's note. Evidence, not excuses, tucked inside. The bruise on my lip throbbed like a quiet bell, but I pressed it shut and lifted my chin. The checkout line was already buzzing carts, nudging forward the smell of coffee beans from the grinder near the end cap. I lined up with shrimp pasta, a bottle of white lettuce, and a single blue cylinder of iodized salt sitting bright in the cart. When it was my turn, the cashier, a woman about mid-30s with tired but kind eyes, glanced up. Her gaze brushed my mouth, lingered just long enough that the woman behind me shifted her weight to listen. That tiny pause stung worse than the bruise. Shame crawled hot, but I exhaled slow. This wasn't a story to spill in a checkout line. This was about paper, not pity. Would you mind, I said, unfolding the coupon with my scribble, printing each item on its own receipt. She hesitated, then tapped the keys. Each one separate. Yes, I said, separate receipts, with times. The printer spat a strip after every beep shrimp receipt, pasta receipt, wine receipt, the salt receipt. My hand stayed steady as I gathered them, folding each with care. A breadcrumb trail, one line at a time. The cashier cleared her throat. Is he paying or are you? She asked flat tone. No judgment, just policy. I felt every ear in line sharpen. My lip pulsed. I set the salt on the belt, my voice firm but quiet. I'm paying, and please put this one on its own receipt. The woman's eyebrows flicked. The manager walked over for an override. He looked like he'd been living on coffee and policy manuals. What's the issue? No issue, I said evenly. I just need each receipt separate with timestamps and lane ID. He studied me, then typed in a code. The printer stuttered, adding the clerk's number, the lane, the minute. Evidence doesn't need sympathy, it needs stamps. When I rolled the cart back toward the salt aisle, I picked up the blue cylinder and placed it in the basket like it was fragile porcelain. A simple thing, less than $1, but it sat there glowing against the white plastic. Respect in grains, I thought. Not seasoning, not taste. Respect. Out in the parking lot, sun sharp on the asphalt, I loaded the groceries slow. In the driver's seat, I spread the receipts across my lap, each one a stripe of proof. I took out my phone and snapped photos with the store sign in the background, then jotted down the cashier's name and lane number in a spiral notebook. For the first time, my evidence lived outside my head. The phone buzzed. A text from Shannon. He needs shrimp. Pasta wine, no mistakes. I typed back one word. Noted. Then, before she could answer, I added, "Send the budget in writing next time." Paper trails flow both ways. A shadow moved near my window. An older woman hair in a soft gray bun leaned slightly toward me. "I saw how you handled that," she murmured. "If you ever need someone to say what they saw, here's my number." She scribbled on the back of her grocery list, tore it free, and slipped it to me. Warmth pricked behind my eyes. Proof doesn't always come from paper. Sometimes it comes from people. I set the salt cylinder on the passenger seat. As I started the car, it rolled, bumped against my arm. I pressed my palm on it. "Stay," I whispered. "Every grain counts." Back home, I opened a fresh notebook and wrote across the first page, "Household purchases by instruction." I drew columns, item cost, time requester, outcome. The receipts went under a glass coaster on the kitchen table. The salt I centered beside them. This wasn't just groceries. It was the start of a ledger, a record no one could erase. Next, I promised myself I reclaim my name. Back from HEB, I slid the receipts under a glass coaster and centered the salt. Sun pooled on the oak table I'd rubbed with lemon oil. Lunch would be here, his office lunch, as if my bungalow were a rented boardroom. I set plates and thin wine glasses stems aligned to the wood seam. At my seat waited a card Shannon had left helper Curly script, smiling like a sticker on a borrowed coat. In the hallway mirror, I pressed a clear bruise patch along my swollen lip. The expensive foundation Lemuel gifted stood on the sideboard pump, winking. Cover or tell the truth, I chose the patch. It doesn't erase, it protects. I moved the bottle to the far end by the air plant and started shrimp and pasta garlic butter, warming the room back to something human. Shannon came first, heels neat on the porch. "Presentation looks nice," she said, eyes skating over the table as if checking props. "Did you let the wine breathe?" I nodded and lifted the foundation from the runner, setting it on the sideboard. Her gaze nicked my lip, then smoothed. "As long as it all lands by noon," she said. Lemuel slipped in behind her with weather on his shoulders. His eyes found the salt in the table's center and flinched. Chandra's knock followed 2 short taps. Then she entered with cautious cheer and took the chair at my left. I sat at the end where the helper card waited like a job I hadn't applied for. I pressed my state ID beside it face up. That I said steady is not my name. The room drew a quiet breath. Lemuel's jaw ticked once. Shannon kept the camera smile people wear when they prefer gloss to focus. No one argued. Silence can be a verdict. I served shrimp pasta, lemon and parsley, bright set down red pepper flakes, and sat. The salt stayed in the middle, not hidden under a dish like a guilt. Lemuel reached for it and then didn't, as if the cylinder were wired. Next time, Shannon said lightly, "Try the other brand. It holds sauce better." Her next time sounded like a leash. Next time I said same tone, submit a list and a budget in writing. Lemuel's chair creaked. "Mom," he said the word, a warning dressed as concern. "Don't make this difficult." Under the table, Chandra's shoe tapped mine twice. A minute later, my phone lit with one word from her lap where Shannon couldn't see evidence. I let the screen go dark past the bread and asked more as if we were all good at kindness. China clicked. Shannon's eyes drifted back to my lip to the clear patch. The foundation bottle glowed on the sideboard, obedient and far. I stood, moved it behind the fern, and returned. No cover today. The patch stayed honest as tape on a cracked window. "This is normal," I said, when Lemuel muttered about drama. "Food on plates, names on IDs." I slid my ID a hair closer to the card so the two almost touched Arlie's over helper truth over assignment. The air thinned. My lungs learned it. "It's just a place card," Shannon said. "It already is," Chandra replied. "She has a name." For a moment, the world narrowed to the salt, haloed by sun. The cylinder bears a small dent from some old drop. I turned the dent toward me. We keep what's dented. We center it anyway. Service continued. I refilled water but didn't wait to be told when to sit. When Shannon reached to shift my knife, I lifted a hand. "It's fine," I said. I said it that way. Midway through, Lemuel pushed back his chair. "I have a call," he said, already rising. He left his napkin folded like a white promise that promised nothing and was gone. The room softened. Shannon checked her phone, then stood. "Lovely," she said, which meant orderly. At the door, she kissed the air near my cheek. "We'll send the guest list for Friday, and that wine, keep the receipt." She meant you keep the receipt. I already had. Chandra lingered on the porch. "Call me later," she said low. "I like your card arrangement." Her glance touched my ID and the helper card. In it, we shared a blueprint. When the house was quiet, I cleared at my own tempo. The dishwasher hummed. My ID slipped warm back into my wallet. The helper card I left where it lay, an exhibit waiting for a case number. I centered the salt again and sat at the kitchen desk with a yellow legal pad. Across the top, I wrote household purchases by instruction. Below 4 columns item, cost time requester. I penciled today's list. My phone lit with the bank's number. Hold music filled the room in syrupy strings. Outside, a neighbor's ring doorbell chimed notes a metronome for patience. The representative came on careful and bright. I asked for monthly statements mailed to me paper copies, even if online is more convenient, a separate alert when funds move. She read a policy, then gave her first name slowly. I wrote it down and thanked her. Not vengeance, record. I put the phone face down and breathed. In the dining room, the helper card waited. I left it and walked to the hallway mirror. The patch tugged gently at healing skin. Names are paperwork, I thought, and paperwork is something I know how to do. I drew a signature box on the pad and under it, one word, witness. I marked the time in the margin and drew a small square beside it, a box I intended to check with ink, not permission. The house sounded like itself again, the hum, the ping, the faint breath of the AC. I slid the receipts flatter under the glass and nudged the salt until it sat dead center. If names are paperwork, I whispered toward the hallway, then let's do paperwork. Tomorrow we speak where signatures are born, I told the room. The words steadied me. I hit speaker on the phone. The bank's hold music looped cheerful violins that never landed. Through the window, Clarice's ring doorbell ticked a small red light. I set my yellow legal pad by the centered salt shaker and printed the date, my full name, then a title to live by household purchases by instruction. A recorded voice thanked me for waiting. Lemon oil clung to the table. Garlic from lunch hung faintly in the air. Outside, a dog barked twice, paused, barked twice. Counting calmed me. When the representative answered, her tone was kind. She verified my date of birth and the last 4 digits, then my address. I need itemized statements mailed to me for the last 24 months, I said, keeping my voice level. Please separate anything labeled household or mom care. I'll also need timestamps lane or operator IDs and any device approvals. Keys tapped. She read back my request. I repeated it one line at a time. Mrs. Dodd. She said, I see recurring Friday transfers near noon. Each shows mobile approval from a device ending in 1B. Is that yours? It wasn't. A branch visit lets us print a packet and place a precautionary flag, she added. I drew a box and wrote, Fridays noon, mobile approvals, not my device. I noted her first name and hung up. The legal pad became a map. I drew columns with a hard pencil edge item, cost time requester outcome witness. Grids don't argue. I slid the morning's receipts under a glass coaster and looked up when a shadow crossed the porch. Arliss Yu, decent Clarice, called. I opened the door. She held a small camera and a printed sheet. I typed this, she said, where to aim, where not to. If you want, we mount this on my porch, aim to catch your front door and table edge. It records what's public, on my property. Consent first, she added, stepping inside after I nodded. She set the camera down, then the sheet. Angle it so nothing private is on frame. But if someone raises a voice on your porch, if there's pressure to sign, there's a record. Relief rose through me like warm water. She lowered her voice. Yesterday, when he walked her to the car, I watered my lilies and pretended not to hear. But I did. He told her he's going to say you're not competent with money. It's elder care, not control, he said. He wants papers. If he brings anything, you text me. Or you call 911. Not competent clicked like a lock. Thank you, I said. I'm keeping logs asking for everything in writing and I won't sign under pressure. That's sound, right? She squeezed my hand. Right on time, she said. I called the county elder law hotline. A calm woman walked me through guardrails, keep logs, save texts and voicemails, avoid arguing in thresholds, do not sign without counsel. If threats surface, call APS. If account access is blocked, ask the branch manager for a fraud review. I wrote each as a box on the pad. Boxes don't panic. Clarice and I said a code phrase. Bring the tamales, I said. If I texted those words, she'd call 911 and step onto her porch. We mounted the camera under her Eve lens, slender and patient. The ring chime winked while we did one practice pass, front door, porch rail, one step down, one step up. A car rolled by with Cumbia floating. Back inside, I faced the lens and said, Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. I will not sign under pressure. I placed today's split receipts on the table within view and set my pinky on the salt cylinder so the frame caught a symbol that meant respect to exactly one person. Clarice checked her phone. Timestamp's good, she said. In the mail lay a glossy brochure I hadn't asked for, Understanding Power of Attorney. The cover showed a smiling son with his arm around an older woman. I photographed the envelope with its postmark and slid both under the glass. A chill pressed along my forearms and then lifted. Information, not omen. My phone buzzed. Lemuel will fix bank access tomorrow. Mom, be ready to sign. I copied his words into my log with the time and replied, please bring a written list and budget. 2 sentences, no bait taken. His typing bubble appeared, then vanished. The bank called back to confirm a branch appointment at 9:45 a.m. The rep gave the address and said my packet would be printed on arrival. I wrote branch 945 packet flag possible. The room felt orderly like a sink finally scrubbed. I cleared the table and left the salt where it belonged, centered dent forward. On the porch, Clarice nudged the camera a hair and nodded at her screen. Text me if you want bread or just a walk, she said. And remember our code. I repeated it. She closed her gate with the soft scrape I've heard for years. The neighborhood returned to regular sounds mail truck, a basketball, someone hosing a driveway. Inside, I left the notebook open to the grid pen tucked along the spiral. The phone sat on its coaster. I slid the appointment slip under the glass and looked around the room as if it could testify. I sat another minute and let the house settle. The legal pad waited with its neat boxes, patient as a field after rain. I wrote one last line, evidence, not excuses. I capped my pen, set it straight, and practiced one slow breath, the kind nurses teach, before a hard step forward. Tomorrow, I told the table's lemon sheen, the camera's red wink, and the salt with its small dent we speak where signatures are born. The appointment slip waited under the glass when I locked the front door. I touched the salt shaker, told the room. If signatures are born anywhere, it's a bank, and stepped into the morning. Houston's sun bleached the sidewalk. A school bus sighed. I drove with the packet list in my purse. Clarice's camera winking red as I pulled away. 2 cameras, I thought, the one above lane 4 that doesn't blink and the ring at home that doesn't forget. The branch smelled like carpet cleaner and coffee. A young greeter clipped a visitor badge to my collar and pointed me to lane 4. The printer hummed with my name on the header. Morning, Ms. Dodd, he said. I nodded and set my evidence notebook on the counter. My hands didn't shake. I had practiced breathing to wiper rhythms. Today I breathed to a lobby printer doing a job I asked for. Small talk kept edges smooth. Y'all got the good pens, I said. The teller smiled. I slid split receipts from HEB under the glass, the one for salt on top like a thesis. Please copy these to my file and attach to the review request. She tapped a key. A soft bell. A senior banker in a navy dress came over with a patient face that could sell calm. Walk me through what you need, she said. What the system already knows, I said. 24 months itemized mailed to me device IDs on mobile approvals, lane numbers, operator initials. No changes, no additions, just light. She nodded. Are you comfortable with authorized co-management, she asked, so a family member can help with transfers? I set my palm on the notebook, then lifted it so the pen lines showed. I speak for myself, I said. No heat. Her eyes softened. All right. No new authority today. Let's review activity. We leaned over a monitor. On Fridays just before noon, a steady drip left my account for household approved by a device that didn't match my phone. The banker's mouth pressed thin. Given your statement, this may qualify as elder financial exploitation. I'm flagging it for fraud review. The case desk will assign a number. It felt like someone had pulled out a chair for me at a crowded table. I wrote Friday noon device mismatch in a square on the pad. The printer spat a heavy packet with my name stamped across the footer lane and employee IDs at the top of each section. Separate envelopes, I asked, and seal across the flaps. The teller fetched 2 envelopes and a roll of tamper tape. Administrative choreography has a music print stack stamp seal sign. We moved to it without hurry. Above us, a ceiling camera buzzed. I met the lens like an old neighbor. Our lobby cameras log entry and exit, the branch manager said. We can print confirmation of your arrival and departure. Please, I said, picturing Clarice's ring catching my return. 2 angles, 2 clocks. Angles don't argue when truth is straight. A pre-filled access form arrived from a side printer. The banker slid it forward with a pen. I read every line, then slid it back. Not today, I said. I'll initial a refusal. She drew a small X, watched me write my initials. Somewhere behind us, coins rattled like rain on a tin awning. The branch dialed the fraud desk and set the handset on the counter. I read transaction IDs I'd copied in pencil. The agent repeated them back and issued a case number. I wrote it in my yellow pad and again on the front of the sealed packet. Numbers are names that paper respects. My phone buzzed. Lemuel B., ready to sign at noon. I copied the text to my notebook with the time and replied as rehearsed, bring a written list and budget. The typing bubble pulsed, then disappeared. I didn't chase it. An elderly customer at the next counter had watched with the relaxed focus of someone waiting on a cashier's check. Ma'am, she said softly, you're doing that real proper. I thanked her. Would you jot your name and number as a witness? I was here this hour. She smiled and wrote in a steady hand. The senior banker initialed the corner without being asked. Plain sight is a shelter. The manager walked me to the door. We paused beneath the lobby camera. I checked my printed confirmation. Lane 4 at 9:53 a.m., exit 1026, I read. Sealed packets too. She nodded. The glass door sighed open. Houston air met me like a warm towel. In the car, I photographed packet seals, the visitor badge, and the lobby timesheet with the bank sign in frame. I filed the images under the case number and wrote the same number on the paper folder I'd brought from home. Lane 4 today, I told the steering wheel, tomorrow the law. A city bus exhaled. I drove home slow, the kind of careful you use when a pie's in your lap. Back at the bungalow, the Ring camera blinked its tiny red. I set the sealed packet beside the centered salt. Paper next to symbol. If he pushes, I told the quiet house, the house itself will testify. Clarice texted a thumbs up and then in words, because she knows I print things, camera caught your return, 10:42 a.m. I wrote that down. Then I made coffee that tasted like relief and sat where the light could find me without asking permission. I had kept my name. I had kept my pen. The rest would follow because I would keep counting. That afternoon, as the washer clicked, an unmarked envelope slid under my door and tapped my shoe. Inside was a tiny USB labeled Mom Care Fund. I set it by the salt and let the camera see me steady, not touching it. The envelope still lay on my dining table, the USB stick peeking like a tooth from its flap. I hadn't touched it beyond sliding it into a clear sleeve, letting Clarice's camera catch the moment. If Lemuel or Shannon wanted me to plug something unknown into my home computer, they had picked the wrong woman. I know better. Viruses, tricks, tracking, none of it belonged in my bungalow. Public places have clocks and cameras. That's why, after lunch, I drove to the Park Place branch of the Harris County Library, neutral ground. The reference desk smelled of paper and sanitizer. A woman with short gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose took my library card and handed me a slip. Terminal B3 session till 4:15. She pointed toward a row of computers beneath a ceiling camera. I thanked her, tucked the slip into my notebook, and sat down. A sticker on the monitor read, Terminal B3. I wrote that down. Witnesses don't always need to be people. Sometimes it's timestamps and stickers. I slid the USB in. The machine blinked and a folder appeared. Mom Care Fund. Inside were neat subfolders. Transfers, payroll statements. My breath hitched. File dates ran back 2 years, the very window I just flagged at the bank. Screens don't lie when the footer stamps the day and the hour. I clicked open transfers. Spreadsheets lined the screen clean as chalkboards incoming from a corporate account, outgoing to the joint account Lemuel controlled. Each Friday, nearly noon. My name in the memo line like I had signed those moves. I pressed print screen. Watched the library's footer stamp, 10/02/2025. 2:47 p.m., Terminal B3, and sent it to the queue. Page after page joined it. Then came the sting. A PDF called Mom Care Discretionary. I opened it. There, in neat corporate language, every Friday transfer was labeled as an expense for my benefit transportation food care. A fiction printed as fact. They had written my story for me, and in it I was a dependent, not a woman with her own bank account. I steadied, my breathing clicked. Print. The librarian strolled by. I waved her over. Could you release my job and sign this slip with the terminal ID? She nodded, initials precise, and handed me the warm stack of papers. The pages smelled faintly of toner and truth. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stepped into the quiet between shelves and answered. A man's voice. Mrs. Dodd, I'm with corporate accounting. My name is Randall. We've hit discrepancies in our audit files labeled Mom Care Fund. They trail to accounts with your name. My pulse stayed steady. I've seen them too, I said. Where do you want to meet tomorrow? 3:00. Our downtown office. I'll bring signed transaction summaries, full chain of custody. His tone was clipped, businesslike. The kind of voice used when trouble is already on paper. I'll be there, I said, and wrote in block letters on my pad, 3:00 p.m. corporate office discrepancies. Back at the terminal, I ejected the USB properly, photographing the screen message safe to remove. Then I stapled the librarian's signed slip to my yellow pad under the bank case number. At home, I set the stage. Salt shaker in the center, sealed bank packet to the left, USB in its clear sleeve to the right. I photographed the tableau. Evidence doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just sits in order. Another text from Lemuel. You'll sign at noon tomorrow, non-negotiable. My reply, all signatures happen at the bank or in an office. Written list, budget only. No more, no less. On the wall calendar, I drew 2 squares, 9:45 a.m. bank, 3 p.m. corporate. Beneath them, 3 lines I read aloud until they felt like muscle memory. I speak for myself. No signatures today. Please note the time. I slid the USB into its sleeve, centered the salt again, and whispered to the quiet bungalow. Tomorrow we speak in offices with clocks. Downtown glass threw back the afternoon sun like a mirror that refused to blink. The security desk smelled faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner. I slid my driver's license across the counter, and the attendant scanned it with a soft beep. A sticker printed my name and the time, 2:57 p.m., and he clipped the visitor badge to my jacket. Above us, black camera domes watched with patient eyes. I wrote the badge time on my yellow pad. Offices with clocks, just like I promised my kitchen last night. The elevator rose on a gentle hum. My face looked steady in the mirrored wall, not brave, not scared, steady. On the 20th floor, a receptionist in navy said, "Accounting is expecting you," and offered water I didn't take. She walked me past cubicles to Conference B, a bright room boxed in by glass walls. Houston's skyline hovered like a second audience beyond the panes. I set my yellow pad at the head of the table and placed the sealed bank packet beside it. The corporate accountant came in with a file box, shirt sleeves, rolled reading glasses on a cord. "Mrs. Dodd," he said, voice even. "I'm Randall. Purpose today is to review internal discrepancies and confirm data integrity. With your consent, I'd like to record for accuracy." I nodded. A little red light winked on. He slid a bound packet across. "Chain of custody on top," he said. I broke the seal. Each page wore a hash ID initials and a timestamp. Arrows on flow charts ran from vendor shells to a corporate account, then to two destinations, Lemuel's business and the joint account carrying my name. Fridays nearly noon, my week printed in arrows. Validation felt like a draft of cold air under a door. The HR compliance officer joined hair in a simple bun, a legal pad already titled Witness Safety. She spoke in plain English. "You are not under investigation, Mrs. Dodd. Our concern is potential misappropriation routed through your identity. We'll provide copies and a signed cover letter stating you are a potential victim and a witness." Something in my shoulders eased just a notch. Randall kept the rhythm page date signature. He projected emails onto the wall, subject lines that tasted like metal root via mom care, clean optics family narrative. Another line item, lunch at mother's charge to staff morale. I thought of the place card that said helper and set my palm on the table to keep from reaching for it from memory. When he asked for my statement, I read 4 sentences from my pad, slow and level. I speak for myself. I do not sign outside of the bank or a court. These receipts and records are mine. Please note the time. Randall stamped the minutes on the page and signed. HR countersigned. The red light kept blinking calm as a heartbeat. They offered certified copies and asked that I file a formal complaint to protect my name. "I will," I said. "Please include a signed cover letter confirming data integrity and chain of custody. No heat in my voice, just the weight of a woman who has learned to let paper do the arguing." On the way out, I detoured to the security desk in the lobby. Could I have my visitor log with arrival and departure times? The attendant printed a narrow receipt. In 2:57 p.m., out 4:36 p.m. I tucked it behind the recording consent form. Angles can't argue, neither can matching clocks. My phone held a new voicemail from Lemuel Velvet Smooth. "Mom, we can fix all this if you just sign at home. Don't make it bigger." I saved it to a folder labeled Messages, then recorded a memo to myself. "No signatures at home. Offices with clocks." Back at the bungalow, the light over my dining table fell in a warm square. I laid the corporate packet beside the sealed bank packet USB in its sleeve. To the right, Salt centered like a small lighthouse. I wrote tomorrow's square 9:30 a.m. elder law clinic on the calendar and pinned the visitor log beneath a magnet. The house was quiet, but it felt less alone. Evidence sat in order. My name, for once, was sitting with it. I clicked off the kitchen light and looked at my reflection in the dark window. Tomorrow, I told the glass the law hears my name from me. Then I let the room go quiet, knowing the cameras, the clocks, and the paper would keep talking even while I slept. Before I left the floor, Randall boxed the originals and handed me a slim envelope of certified copies. The cover letter read, "Prepared for Arliss Dodd, dated today," with a raised company seal. He flagged 3 pages for me to carry the email that said, "Family Narrative, the Friday Transfer Summary," and the chart where my name was added under optics. "Think of these as the spine," he said. "Everything else will hang from it." I filed the envelope behind the bank packet in my tote. In the elevator, a young man in a hard hat noticed my badge and the way I held my pad. "You good ma'am, not nosy decent." "I'm getting there," I said. He nodded like he knew the road. The lobby air felt cooler, as if the building trusted clocks and records more than promises. On Louisiana Street, buses sighed. A bike bell tapped a bright note. I sat in my car for 3 steady breaths, then photographed the badge against the dash clock, 4:38. I wrote those minutes on my pad under a new header corporate meeting 20th floor and underlined it twice. Small lines, steady mind. At home, I made one exchange. I set the helper card in the center for a heartbeat, then replaced it with my state ID. The card went back to a drawer. The ID stayed. The salt sat between the bank packet and the corporate packet, a little white column holding the middle. I took one photo with the lamp on and one with the lamp off. Clarice's porch camera would show the same minutes from another angle. Angles can't argue. Paper won't shout. It waits for the right room to be heard ID. The morning air in downtown Houston felt heavy with heat already, though it wasn't yet 10. I walked into the Harris County Elder Law Clinic with my tote heavy on my shoulder, salt shaker doodled on my yellow pad like a reminder of respect that could no longer be erased. At the front desk, I signed the intake sheet. The volunteer attorney, young enough to be my daughter, read the line I wrote: elder financial exploitation, domestic assault. She didn't flinch. Instead, she nodded, asked for my ID, and photocopied it alongside the sealed bank packet, the corporate folder, and the USB sleeve. Anxiety hummed in my chest, but my hand stayed steady. I wasn't here to be pitied. I was here to be recorded. We spread the evidence across a low table. Receipts in thin curls of paper, visitor logs, Clarice's Ring camera timestamps my yellow pad entries. The attorney marked them A through G in blue ink neat letters like they were already headed to a judge's bench. Breath came easier seeing order spread across paper instead of scattered in my mind. She asked me to read my sworn statement aloud. I didn't waver. I speak for myself. I do not sign outside a bank or court. These receipts are mine. Please note the time. She added legal notes in the margins, Texas statutes, elder exploitation codes, domestic assault references. My voice didn't shake. For the first time in a long time, it sounded like it belonged to me. 2 blocks later, we stepped into the district attorney's intake office. Fluorescent light glass window, a mic tucked into the counter. A victim advocate handed me a brochure of rights, while the intake officer pressed a button on an audio recorder. Date, time, file ID, he spoke into the mic. The red light blinked on. My evidence stack was photographed labels taped across envelopes, chain of custody, logged in handwriting as neat as his tie. The officer's questions came clean, not cruel. Friday transfers mobile approvals from a phone. Not mine. I answered with the math already in my pad. The messages saved the code Clarice and I made. Bring the tamales meant danger. My voice sounded older than my years, but also steady. Midway, my phone buzzed. Lemuel's name glowed across the screen. The officer nodded. I pressed speaker. Mom, Lemuel's voice was warm, rehearsed. You're confused. Let me handle the bank. You're not. He didn't get to finish. The officer spoke into the recorder crisp as chalk on a board. Caller attempts to assert incapacity. Victim responds coherently. Caller instructed to cease contact. My relief came sharp, almost fierce. I hung up. The voicemail auto-transcribed itself into the record. Gaslight caught on tape. The printer coughed out a page stamped with a case number in bold black. The advocate slid it across her hand steady. Protective steps, she said no. Contact, preserve, evidence safety plan. She spoke of timelines for protective orders, affidavit subpoenas. The attorney scheduled blocks for tomorrow. My breath slowed into something new, resolve that had paperwork behind it. On a hallway bench, I photographed the case number beside my yellow pad, the salt shaker doodle smiling back like a witness of its own. I texted Clarice a single word, filed. Her thumbs-up emoji popped back with the timestamp, 11:42 a.m. Outside, the sun bounced off courthouse glass, hot and clean. I whispered into the brightness offices with clocks heard me. The attorney walked beside me, saying the next step would be protective order hearings, maybe arraignment if charges stuck. I nodded quiet but ready. My name wasn't an excuse anymore. It was on record, printed, sealed, and numbered. That night, at my dining table, I slid the case number into my wallet behind my state ID. Salt-centered bank packet left corporate packet, right USB sleeve on top. I whispered to the walls, tomorrow a judge hears my name. The courthouse smelled faintly of coffee and floor wax. I cleared security palms flat on cool steel, then rode the elevator with a handful of strangers who stared at their shoes. On the monitor by courtroom 8, my case number from yesterday blinked on the docket. The victim advocate met me at the door and pressed a single sheet into my hand boxes to tick calm ink that said, "Breathe, speak. Keep your papers close." I stood a little taller. Anxiety was there, but it did not get the front seat. Inside, the bailiff explained the dance without drama. petitioner, first respondent. Second, he said voice low enough to settle the room. I took a bench near the front, lined up my sealed bank packet, the corporate packet, my yellow pad, and the USB sleeve. The salt shaker wasn't with me, but its shape sat steady in my mind, a center I could return to. My breath slowed to match the clock over the judge's door. Case 814. The court reporter called timestamping the minute. We stood. The judge lifted his eyes over bifocals and had us sworn. The assistant DA introduced exhibits lettered from the clinic A through G, then added the ring clip Clarice had downloaded marked H. My name sounded ordinary in that room, not a plea, not an apology, just a person present. I gave my 4 lines like I had practiced. I speak for myself. I do not sign outside a bank or court. These receipts are mine. Please note the time. The judge nodded, asked for dates of injuries and threats. I answered cleanly, anchoring each date to a receipt, a text, a photo, a case number. The court reporter's hands tapped the keys. The sound was a type of rain I could stand in. The assistant DA moved to admit the exhibits. Defense counsel objected, said the ring video was context-free. The judge held up a palm. Lay your foundation. The bailiff dimmed the lights. The screen hummed to life with Clarice's kitchen window angle, the one that saw more than any of us wished. Lemuel's voice filled the room, even though he sat only a few yards away. Calm, reasonable like a tutorial on how to make a mother small. You'll sign tomorrow. You're not remembering things like you used to. Cross-examination came like an old storm I recognized by the smell. Lemuel kept his eyes on the judge. She forgets, Your Honor. She misplaces cards. We step in for her. The judge asked me to explain a single line item from a Friday transfer. I read off the bank case number, the lane ID, the employee initials the time. I did not dress it up. I did not let it trail into feeling. It stood up on its own legs. Then the air shifted. The judge warned against intimidation. Lemuel muttered not quite under his breath, She owes me. The words jumped sharp and ugly. He lifted his voice shoulders tight. The bailiff moved between us, palm out. The court reporter read back the mutter, then the raised sentence flat as stone. Outburst on the record. Everyone heard the sound a mask makes when it slips. Judicial findings came without a gavel, only a steady voice. This court finds a pattern of financial exploitation and coercive threats. The judge issued a temporary protective order. No contact, 200 yards, stay away. No third-party pressures. Surrender of firearms. No managing my accounts. He set a review date in 14 days and watched Lemuel the way a doctor watches a fever break and wonders if it will spike again. Enforcement was spelled out like a recipe card. Violation meant arrest for contempt. The assistant DA would file bank subpoenas and coordinate with corporate counsel. Certified copies slid toward me in a manila folder with a blue stamp, bright as a bruise healing. My hands didn't shake taking them. In the hallway, Shannon stood against a wall of bad art and attempted smile. She kept her voice low. I didn't know about the mom care ledgers. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she did, and only knew now that paper doesn't lie. Offices with clocks, I said. Put it in writing. Her mouth pressed thin. She nodded once as if she understood the language of procedure at last. The advocate walked me to victim services. A staffer scheduled a locksmith, enrolled me in text alerts, and highlighted a box that read, "If contact occurs, call 911 show order." I penciled bank follow-up for the afternoon and noted the rumor that corporate HR was already moving. I did not smile. I did not celebrate. I let a deep breath land and hold. Outside, the morning had turned bright. I slid the protective order behind my state ID where my case number already rested. The stairwell carried my words back to me as I said, "Next, I freeze the accounts he used my name to drain." Then I put my papers in order, squared the corners, and went down into the light, ready to do exactly that. Before I left the floor, the assistant DA met me by the elevators and handed me a short checklist. Go to the bank's fraud desk with the order. Request immediate freezes on any accounts listing my name with co-manager access. Get written confirmations. Photograph the teller window clock beside the paperwork. Angles can't argue, she said, almost smiling. I repeated it like a hymn. In my pocket, the folded list pressed against the warm paper of the order to small rectangles that felt like tools, not wishes. I squared my shoulders, found the stairs, and walked toward the day. If he tests the boundary tonight, the cameras will hear it first. I told the evening light outside the courthouse and walked the 2 blocks to Frost Bank. The protective order rode behind my state ID like a spine. Inside, printers hummed and the floor smelled faintly of paper and plastic. I signed in at Fraud and Disputes, laid the order and case number on the counter, and the branch manager pointed me toward a glass cubicle. "We'll take it from here," she said. The room was clear, quiet, and small. 2 chairs and a monitor with the time steady in the corner. I sat tall. 2-factor took a minute license, last 4 a code to my phone. I repeated my rule so there'd be no confusion, no signatures in kitchens. We handle money in offices with clocks. The manager smiled without warmth, approval, not comfort, and called the fraud officer. The officer opened an Elder Financial Exploitation tab and spoke in steps. "With this protective order, we can act. Do you authorize a $0 daily limit on outgoing transfers, a halt on ACH pulls, and removal of any joint access?" "Yes," I said. My pulse steadied at the phrase "hard hold." It sounded like a door sliding shut on a room I shouldn't have been in. We moved to the terminal. She froze the joint accounts and created a new account with only my name. A fresh debit card slid from a small printer, and she handed me a PIN pad. "All alerts go to your phone." Only she said, tapping the screen, "If he attempts a login, you'll see it. If he pushes, we document." I nodded. The keyboard clicked on her side like rain on a roof I finally owned. Next came the paper trail. We scanned the corporate packet from yesterday, the visitor log from the glass tower, the lane 4, statements, the USB sleeve, and the order itself. Each page received a chain of custody label and a red date stamp. The clerk printed a small slip bank case ID and slid it across the desk as if passing a key. I tucked it behind the protective order. 2 thin shields front and back. The bank's legal liaison joined by speakerphone. "Once the DA's subpoenas land, we'll certify your records and preserve disputed funds," she said. She read out their internal alerts, recurring Friday transfers device, mismatches, geo-fenced logins. Hearing another voice outline what I'd been counting in the dark made my shoulders drop a fraction. The math was no longer private. We drafted stop payments for vendor shells. With my consent, the fraud officer emailed corporate HR compliance and attached the protective order, the fraud flag notice, and the chain list. "Duty to report," she said, typing. No speeches, just structure. While the email crossed town, we added SIM swap alerts, geo-fence warnings, and transaction texts for anything above $5. I chose a passphrase only I could say right, a family word I've never written down. My phone rang before the email's whoosh faded. Corporate HR effective, immediately administrative suspension of Lemuel pending investigation. Workstation access and payroll routing are locked. The words didn't arrive like fireworks. They arrived like a breaker flipping off in a far room. "You may authorize certified copies through Frost." "I do," I said. "Not Triumph Fit." A text from Shannon followed. I didn't know. I typed back, "Put dates and amounts in writing to the DA intake email. No calls." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. The fraud officer didn't pry. "Boundary," she said, approving the line I had drawn. We finished evidence imaging, and the clerk affixed a tamper seal to the envelope. The manager returned with a printed freeze confirmation and walked me toward the lobby. Ceiling cameras eyed the hallway. Time in the corner of the monitor matched the stamp on my slip. "If anyone pressures you, come straight here," she said. "This is enough to hold until the court dates." I believed her. The building felt made of rules, not moods. Outside, the afternoon felt ordinary again, bus breaks and people talking. I drove home with the AC blowing hard on my cheek and the new debit card resting in a sleeve on the console. At the table, I set the freeze confirmation beside the protective order and centered the salt shaker between them. The little cylinder looked like a candle between 2 stone tablets. I circled Saturday on the calendar locks at 9 camera angles at 10:30, coffee with Clarice after. Then the phone lit. Attempted login blocked. I breathed out, let it pass, and rinsed a glass at the sink. The refrigerator clicked on. Somewhere outside, a kid laughed like a whistle. Ordinary held. I slid today's receipts under the glass coaster and wrote the day on my yellow pad. Fraud desk flags active. New account card issued. HR suspension confirmed. Freeze confirmation printed. Boundary text only. I added one more square at the bottom. If he tests tonight, the cameras will hear it first. The sentence looked familiar in ink. This time it was backed by paper. Dusk softened the kitchen. I checked the ring zones and the porch light, then put the new debit card behind my state ID, the case number, and the order. 3 rectangles, then 4. Tools, not wishes. I stood a moment longer with both palms on the table, feeling the cool wood and the small weight of salt under my fingertips. No speeches, no dramatic vows, just a room in order. Outside, a car rolled by slow, but not stopping. The porch camera blinked once and settled. I turned off the kitchen light and let the house hold me upright. The house settled before midnight, the kind of hush where the fridge ticks before the motor kicks in. I set the protective order, the case number, and my phone on the kitchen table and angled the porch cam feed. Full screen, motion lights armed, thermos of tea by the salt shaker. If he tested the boundary, the cameras would hear it first. At 12:07, a soft buzz. Banner motion detected front walk. Out at the curb, a sedan idled with headlights off. The lens caught a partial plate, and a shoulder turned toward my yard. I wrote the time on my yellow pad, then 2 words, quiet tone. I stayed. Silence can be stronger than a lock. The doorbell never rang. The handle twitched metal against metal, a slow try. At the seam, a whisper tried on tenderness. Mom, open. I did not answer. I slid my thumb to the emergency page, breathed once, pressed record. I spoke for the mic order in place. I am inside, subject outside. The blue timestamp held steady in the corner like a tiny courthouse clock. I called 911. Protective order violation, I said, and read the case number and order number cleanly. Weapons, the dispatcher asked. Unknown, I said. Subject remains off camera, tries handle whispers for entry. She said officers were en route and asked me to stay inside with doors secured. Yes, ma'am, I said, as if we were arranging a ride to church. Across the street, Clarice's side camera woke and posted a second angle hood elbow fence line to our block thread. 3 doors down, a neighbor added his doorbell clip, a silhouette pausing by my gate. I texted back my case number and wrote save everything. Collective witnessing stitched from porches. Footsteps scuffed along the side yard to the back. The gate latch rattled once, then again. You're confused, he called through the slats, calm and coached. I need to help with the accounts. I narrated into my phone like a nurse taking vitals. 1219 rear gate. Capacity claim repeated. Subject attempting entry at prohibited distance. Description instead of argument kept my hands steady. Blue washed the street. A cruiser slid in. Dark quiet, then the lights came up. 2 HPD officers stepped out with the economy of people who do this often. One walked the porch line. The other moved along the fence with his shoulder to the boards. I stood where the porch officer could see me through the glass and waited for a nod. The camera clock kept time. My tea went cold. Ma'am, stay inside, he said through the door. State your name and birth date. I did then, slid photocopies of the order and the intake sheet under the threshold. He read, then tapped his body cam. Complainant confirms order. Respondent reported within prohibited range. Probable cause. He asked where the cameras were placed. I pointed to the porch lens and tapped my phone. Hold there, he said. Out in the yard, the voices went from measured to firm. Hands visible. Step into the light. The reply came low and offended. This is family. The officer answered with the order terms, yards contact ban, no night visits, no approach. Clarice's floodlight bloomed behind the fence. The porch cam saw it all, the stance, the distance, the reach toward the latch. Then the cuffs ratcheted a clean, practical sound, and my lungs finally took a full breath. Over the radio, a tinny voice cut in. The night magistrate confirmed booking for violation of a protective order and harassment, with a note to evaluate stalking based on repeated contact and hour of night. The officer read me a report number and placed a small card at the base of the door. He spoke into his body cam again, adding links to our neighborhood clips. "Evidence preserved," he said. I wrote the report number next to my case number in block letters. Afterward, the porch officer swept the windows with his light and checked each latch. "Tomorrow, new locks," he said. "Keep the motion lights sensitive. If anyone calls asking you to change passwords or codes, don't. Call us." He handed me a resource card with the hotline and space for case numbers. Clarice crossed with a spare battery floodlight and set it toward the alley. "Just until morning," she said, and the house felt less alone. The street went ordinary, the hiss of a sprinkler, a freight horn far off. I sat on the bench and wrote the last entry. 0112, HPD departed. Subject transported, porch cam saved, neighbor clip saved, order enforced. I taped the new report number beside the case number and slid both beneath the glass coaster we've used for Sunday lemonade since Lemuel was little. Then I set my phone to Do Not Disturb, except for DA and HPD, and drank the tea cold. The clock over the stove ticked louder than usual each second and earned victory. Near. Okay, it would be easy to tell my life as one long apology. Tonight I did not. I let the paper say what it said and the cameras hold what they saw. I put the protective order behind my state ID, stacked the bank freeze confirmation beneath, and left the salt shaker in the center, a small lighthouse on my table. Offices with clocks heard me again. I told the room and meant it. Before dawn, an email landed with a soft chime, a line plain as bread, attached Shannon's statement with dates and amounts. I did not open it yet. I watched the blue square of the porch cam wink to sleep, wrote the time in my pad, and let the house be the house quiet square, finally on my side. By 8 a.m., the city wore that rinsed Saturday light. I printed Shannon's email, clipped her affidavit to my yellow pad, and walked into DA intake with my packet's porch cam. Clips freeze confirmations, bank case number, neighbor logs. The victim advocate checked the staples, slid a chain of custody sheet across, and I initialed each square. I breathed like a swimmer between waves, steady and deliberate. Even now. Shannon arrived 10 minutes later in a warm cardigan and a face that hadn't slept. No hug. She set her notarized affidavit down dates amounts who told her to say mom care what she'd heard in our kitchen when she thought the water was loud enough. The advocate stamped the copy, scanned the original, and asked about a private room. We didn't. We signed under the wall clock. The assistant DA met us with coffee lids already clicked shut. "We'll charge domestic assault violation of a protective order, harassment, and financial exploitation," she said, tapping my stack. "Bank helps, camera helps, the affidavit helps." She explained a no-contact expansion to include workplace and neighbors, spoke in short sentences a person can breathe between. She looked at me, not through me. On video, corporate HR counsel confirmed suspension would stand the audit-matched Friday transfers, and their insurer would discuss restitution after court. "We'll honor subpoenas and provide certified ledgers," she said. "Due process has an accent, clipped, careful, complete." On the courthouse steps, the advocate gave a short press brief. No names, no spectacle, just a phone number and a sentence about elder fraud and family pressure. A microphone turned toward me. Offices with clocks protect people like me. The cameras blinked. A reporter thanked me quietly. The week moved like a legal metronome. Bond hearing violation kept him in. Discovery exchanged. HR access revoked, logs preserved. Garnishment flagged. At home, I changed the lock's scheduled counseling. I cooked tuna salad beans, cornbread, and ate with the salt in the center. The house learned my rhythm again. Sentencing morning, the courtroom smelled faintly of polish and paper. I sat second row with the advocate. A no-contact officer took the aisle like a blue boundary. The judge adjusted his glasses, read the assessment, and confirmed victim statements were on file. They were. I kept my hands still and thought about the first night I counted receipts under lamplight. The ruling was clean. State jail time on the order violation. Felony probation on the financial counts with treatment and service nowhere near me. A restitution order with wage garnishment and any tax refunds routed to my account until the balance read zero. Permanent no contact. No third-party pressure. The court reporter typed. I exhaled and tasted nothing like victory, only air. Afterward, the clerk handed me certified copies with raised seals. The advocate circled next steps, restitution officer counseling home safety check. You chose the right rooms, she said. I texted Clarice 3 words, it's done, and her porch light blinked twice a neighbor's hallelujah. That afternoon, HR emailed a signed letter. He was removed from systems barred from references, and they'd assist the DA in loss calculations. A goodwill stipend would cover lock changes and 2 months of utilities pending restitution. I replied with banking details I hadn't let anyone hold before then, filed it behind the freeze confirmation. Paper, once a trap, now a ladder. Evening, rinsed the blinds with a soft orange. I set the protective order, the freeze notice, and the restitution schedule under a magnet on the fridge, like report cards from a school that finally saw the work. I laid one place, setting mine at the table. The salt shaker went in the center. The foundation bottle was long gone. On the sideboard, the clear sleeve still held the USB, a relic now. I made soup, onion, a bay leaf, chicken thighs bought on sale, shredded with a fork, carrots cut on a diagonal, because that's how a woman takes her time. When the simmer settled, I pinched salt and let it fall. The smell rose up clean and honest the way a house forgives you. I poured a bowl for me and set a second empty bowl for whoever kind might sit someday. Shannon texted before 9, I will keep cooperating. I am sorry. I typed what I could hold. For legal matters, email the advocate. For healing time. She wrote, understood. It did not mend anything. It did not tear anything new. I sent Clarice a photo, the single place setting the centered salt, a gentle curl of steam. She sent a heart, and you kept the salt. I looked at the shaker, ordinary glass, ordinary grains, and said, yes, I kept the salt. The quiet felt earned. Later, I slid my state ID behind the case number and tucked the new debit card away. I washed the pot and left it to dry. The porch cam slept. The blue square on my phone dimmed to black. In the window, my face looked like my mother's tired soft around the eyes and not erased anymore. Some stories end with apologies that arrive too late. Mine ends with boundaries that arrived on time, written and stamped. If you need a line to stand on, make it in an office with a clock. If you need a witness, start with paper. If you need courage, put the salt back where it belongs and make enough soup for you. I turned off the kitchen light, left the salt in the center, and let the house rest. Justice is not a feeling. It is a rhythm you hear when the fridge motor ticks on and you don't flinch. I locked the door and told the dark window what I had earned the right to say, good night. And the silence answered simple and whole. I'm the mother who kept the salt. Here's what I learned. Document before you argue, speak only in rooms with clocks, and never sign from fear. Love does not excuse control. Family does not outrank safety. If you're living quietly in harm, start a paper trail. Today, receipts. Dates, witnesses. Ask for help. That's courage, not weakness. What part of my story mirrors yours? What boundary will you set this week? If this touched you, type 1 or share where you're watching from. If it didn't tell me why I'm listening. For more true stories of dignity and grit, please subscribe to the channel.